Hello everyone, Randy Harrington here. This video is going to be an interview with a friend of mine from the hill country down in Texas. And he currently lives in Missouri in the Mark Twain, right in the smack dab of the thick parts of the Mark Twain National Forest. But he also has a place down in the hill countries of Texas, a ranch, and I've spent some time down there with him. I've been down there, 3 or 4 times. Even took my daughter down there once, and this is going to be his story, and it is an interesting one. Pay attention. Can you hear me?
Hey, Randy.
There it
Good to
is.
hear from you, buddy. How you doing, man?
It's working.
Hey,
Yay!
it is. Elon Musk knows something we don't because Starlink is working right now, for sure.
Right on, right on. I was always wondering how reliable it is.
It's pretty good, except for a bad rainstorm out here in the Mark Twain National Forest. We're out here on some government land, and you've been here before. Real pretty, 82 degrees, nice. How you doing?
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about, getting one of his little mobile satellite ones, that you can put on for a camper or something,
Yeah,
uh, for remote locations. But we haven't decided that yet, but we may.
it's allowing me to access almost any programming video-wise that I need, and also give me a full internet access here in Elsinore, where there's not a lot of tower space, and it's in the middle
Man,
of the forest. So it's been pretty good for me for sure.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with you. I was actually looking through my pictures a month ago, and I came across that deer kill when the last time I was there. That deer kill that was left at the baiting
the
tree.
fresh axis deer that we found. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So of course that made me think, man, there's a lot of good stories from that ranch, and so I knew at some point we'd have to have this conversation just so that you
Sure,
know. So how long have we known each other now? I mean,
buddy. It goes all the way back to when I first had my encounters. As you recall, I got on the internet and started looking for somebody I could talk to about the subject matter, and only a few people that I got a hold of, like yourself, even Marlon Davis, MK Davis, would be able to talk to me about it and let me know that they took me seriously. Central West Texas was not a hot topic at that time, the
right,
Guadalupe River
right.
Basin and all that. But now I think people are starting to realize that there's a lot of big tracts of land down there. And yeah, you and I found some special stuff down there on those tracks for sure. I just remember that what I discovered down there was there were huge tracts of land, 50,000 acres and above, high fence ground that people use for private hunting that were undisturbed and protected, and that drew in a lot of interesting.
Well, we
I'm
can we can give general locations because people are curious. So we can say outside of that big city. We know what the big city it
it
was.
was far from that big city called was it called San Antonio? Yeah, wasn't far, about 40 minutes. Wasn't far from there. Yeah,
Right, right. Yeah.
yeah,
So, I've been down there two or three times. I know
yeah.
I know I came down there by myself, and then I went down there with my daughter, and then didn't I
Yep,
come down
great
again by
trip.
myself?
Yeah, and John
So,
was with, I think, the last time, John Edward. But yeah, you came down
yeah.
3 times, and I think once or twice we got together here in Missouri and had some good time as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So so
that
that's
was
what I want people to know. I want people to know that I know Mike. We both almost got involved with the Falcon Project if
sure,
that wouldn't have collapsed in on itself.
sure.
So we would have certainly enjoyed that time together, but it didn't pan out.
But we
Uh,
enjoyed every time we had together, didn't we? I had a mate.
yeah,
He just
yeah. Well,
kept up
that
in my what I thought I'd seen the technology. Like when Scott Carpenter had the back trail camera, you showed me the 360 surround view with FLIR of a field with coyote urine. You showed me some things, Randy, that I've not seen by other people, and I've enjoyed being out in the field with you. I have for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, it helps when two dudes that are ate up with it can enjoy each other's company.
How can you help but be ate up with it when you see something
Right,
people claim doesn't exist? Yeah,
right.
I enjoyed your company for sure.
Well, I mean, hell, you live right there in the midst of the one of the biggest national forests in the nation right now. So how
It's
can it not be on your mind?
right behind me. I'm on a 680-acre tract right now, with surrounded by national forest, 15,000 acres of it here in Elsinore. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on a big hot area that people have
So
seen.
I hope everybody know that we're not just shooting in the breeze here. We're
No,
that's a dude that lives in the middle of it right now.
yeah,
So
but I grew up here. I had to go to Texas to have my first encounter, whatever you want to call that, adventure that you go on. I had to get down there to the hill country before I found something like that out. But yeah,
now, isn't that crazy? Uh,
it,
well, so what on the ranch down there? I mean, I don't even know if you're comfortable saying what river it was. That river is so long that it really won't reveal
at
much.
the end of this, because at the end of this, I want to talk to you about you and I going back in the field together. It's been too long. Some of the old guys are coming back, and maybe we need to get out there. But I'm just saying, I had never imagined going down to hill country, which I thought was settled, would ever have some wild ground in it. But I got down in there and saw what huge tracts these hunting leases and private landowners had bought, and how they protected it and had literally armed guards, as you'll recall, guarding it. And so it created a habitat for axis deer, big hogs, rattlesnakes, javelina, and a lot of whitetails and some other things that may be out there too. Yeah.
Well, let's go back in time to the what happened on your radar. I'm sure everybody knows the subject Bigfoot because we've all seen it. We've all seen the legend of Boggy Creek and all that kind of stuff. So it's always in the back of all of our minds. But
Sure.
what's that come to Jesus moment with you when you were out there in the hill country and you said, "Oh my God, is that what I think it is?"
Uh, we went down there because my dad had a heart transplant. We had to be next to Texas Transplant Institute. So we came up with a little ground out there in the hill country that was on private track, had a lot of water and a bunch of rock and caves. It was really cool. An Indian burial mound. It was very cool. And I took my son out exploring a couple times. About the third time we went, uh, something started throwing rocks at us, and I put my arm around him and got him inside the side, and he got scared because he could sense it in me. I took him back to the main farmhouse, and I thought, be up with my mind that's been in the woods in the Ozarks hunting turkey and deer all my life. I thought, what in the world, those rocks? It's private ground. You cannot get in by gate or helicopter or anything. It's all got cameras on it. But yeah, so I had to find out, and I went on a journey to find out. We can discuss that.
Wow. Wow. Well, I mean, as most of my viewers, I mean, I'm a very small channel. I'm not very large at all. But the people that are here, they're here for the logical discussion of
You're
what's
very
going on.
yeah in the arena of people that actually get out and do real research for this subject matter. I mean, you showed me things marking on rocks that you left under a site that you knew they were throwing them. The things you do, Randy, are cutting edge. And so, no, I was a novice. I was scared. Here's what I had: an iPhone 4, a side by side, and a bunch of cameras, force feeding bin. And I started leaving them on top of these shooting shacks on a hunting lodge. I'd leave 3 or 4 watermelons and 7 or 8 cantaloupes. And I'd go back the next day and it was gone. And I mean, what's going to take that volume of fruit from HEB in Texas? So I was doing that a little too much, I think. And that's when my son and everybody else didn't want to go down there anymore. It became, and so I called a bunch of researchers after I saw what was going on online, with the kind of toxicity that came with exposing any Bigfoot evidence. I thought, I'm going to turn this over to guys that can handle this situation because I wanted to see the video or the audio and know the truth. So I after getting rocks thrown again at me at a shooting shack when I was emptying a tub, and it scared the hell out of me, I'll admit that. I made some phone calls and I let people bring in their equipment and just show me, I'm from Missouri, show me what's here. And they did.
Well, I do know that when I was down there and you and I were walking around in the dark through some of the creek on that ranch,
Yeah.
we found a stack of rocks, a very nice looking stack of rocks. Now, also, you took me up to the border of the property where you had those twisted pines that were
Oh,
twisted four and
that's,
five times.
that was the first thing. Look, I called the friends that you and I know. I won't name everybody mutually. They're people that are well known in the Bigfoot industry. I called an audio guy. I called the world's most famous video enhancer, and I called a guy from the out west near Arizona who's well known for audio as well, and that they all showed up. And we had a couple weekends there where we just went searching. And one of the first things that the dude from Texas said that was, I'll say, what he's called Buddy. He's MK's buddy. His name is kind of like Buddy. He's walked up on a grove of cedar trees that were just twisted, and you could tell there is no natural phenomenon that's going to twist a tree like that, like a peppermint. And he said, Mike, they're hard on cedar, and what you see here is some marking of territory. He said, yeah, you got something going on here. And so I ended up pulling some hair out of that, having analyzed back when we
Now,
all
now
dinner.
I went into that cedar grove with you, and you showed me one of those twists. It looked like it was twisted about 4 times,
Sure it was.
and two of them together twisted
Yeah,
about four
yeah, they
times.
together. There was an entire grove, and what I come to realize was that was the high acorn area where all the hogs were, and they were just letting you know, with their, that this is where we get our food. Yeah, there was a
Well,
bunch. Sure
well,
was.
I want to tell the listeners that I've got a picture of that pine twist, and I'm going to find it somewhere. And I'm going
Good.
to after we're done with this conversation, I'm going to post the picture of that deer kill that was left behind the ranch there. At that
We
we'll go over that, and and I'm going to show that picture, and I'm going to show the picture of the pine twist, and I also have a picture of the rock stack that you and I find. I hope I've got it.
multiple rock stacks, cairns, whatever you want to call them, from little to one in the middle of a creek that the biologist that was with us, John Morley, John, thought was amazing. And so yeah, we found a lot of cairns, a lot of rock stacks. We found a lot of stuff. I mean, behavior that I was never aware of before that I became aware of. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. It lasted about 4 years. And then, of course, you can't. It's hard to finance something like that. You got to go where your job takes you. But yeah, that was. We could talk about any of that you'd like to discuss. So
Yeah, well, so like you alluded to earlier, you kind of went a little heavy on the I'm going to give them baits and give them food.
that's
So
my initial reaction as someone from the Ozarks was, if you want to hunt a bear or some hogs, you put fermented corn. For a bear, you put Dale donuts. If you want to hunt something, you know what to bait it with. So I didn't know what was take. I suspected what threw a rocket. I kind of did. I was online, and I didn't want to trust the Bigfoot community. So I went and got a bunch of soft fruits like cantaloupes. And there were other guys like Fred that said they like cantaloupe, and they do. They don't like bananas. They like peanut butter, cantaloupe, pancakes. You know what they like.
right. Well, I want to tell the listeners that I think the last time I was out there with Mike and his son, who now is a grown man, but when I was there, he was telling me that he normally did not bait with meats. It was usually fruits and candy bars and things like that. So
Always. I was taught you always. Yeah.
so at this tree that particular night, you had barbecued up some meat and you left some meat there. Now let's go over that.
Did that, Randy? I was always told that Steve, who's doing the part, it was a big footer, always told me that if you leave meat, you're going to encourage aggression, and they're going to respond. Yeah, that's the first time I'd ever left any meat, and that's the night we found the axis deer with literally its ribs smashed in. It looked like something had punched into its cavity and removed its innards, and then left the rest for me or you as a gift. And we got pictures of it. It's a
Yeah, and that's what's fascinating is now
yeah.
somebody might look at that, and because of the nature of an animal being destroyed and killed, we would take that as an aggressive thing, when in reality it might have been an exchange.
To them, they're providing some. I gave them some barbecued ribs, but probably with an excitement in my voice, and that was not unlike a couple of times I want to tell you about when Buddy and MK and I did some things out there. We had a reaction that night that I'd never experienced before. They'd never thrown a fresh live carcass of an axis deer, a Texotic, into the yard with a massive rib injury, and laid it up there for us. To them, that's an exchange. It's fair, and really, axis are pretty good eating. I just never got one like that. Yeah, it was an amazing time.
Now, can we go back to you had already established a type of relationship with the ones that were there
Here's what
because
I had already established, that something was there that was eating a mineral bucket of food every week, of fruits, and leaving teeth marks and apples, and doing things that I knew was a primate of some sort. Something was up. It threw rocks. It was eating. It was leaving teeth marks, and it was eating big barrels of food. Not just one, obviously, but. And then I started finding some scat, and then I'm sitting there with my iPhone 4, and I walk up to a shooting shack, and I'm filling up the bait deal, and I see some feces, and I see some evidence of something curled up in the shack and sat there and ate all of it. And as I'm loading the bucket, boom, a rock hits the top of the shooting shack, and then boom, a bigger rock. And it got me, I'd like to think nothing scared me in the woods, but that's what got me to call all these researchers to come in. And that's when it really got interesting. That's when, Carl Supp and MK and those guys came in to help me. And then I got your number from some of them and I called you. But we had some experiences during that period. For example, MK reduced some audio I had. It was clearly a baby crying. Okay. That's what it sounded like to all of us. On the playback, we didn't hear it that night. We left some audio equipment out there. Some old boxes in the trees like we used to do on a string. Make a short story long, he resolved to file it. You could hear what sounded like a baby crying. Now it's 38 degrees in the hill country of Texas in the scrub cedar at 3 a.m. And so what is that? The next day I saw my first set of 18-inch footprints inside of a creek, in the silt inside of a creek. And that's when, those were pointed out to me, just like the twisted trees. And that's when everybody that left after that weekend said, well, you probably got some Bigfoot or, what appears to be Bigfoot out here running around. So I just gave them the gate code and they came down routinely to help. Scrub cedar at 3 a.m. And so what is that? The next day I saw my first set of 18-inch footprints inside of a creek, in the silt inside of a creek. And that's when, those were pointed out to me, just like the twisted trees. And that's when everybody that left after that weekend said, well, you probably got some Bigfoot or, what appears to be Bigfoot out here running around. So I just gave them the gate code and they came down routinely to help. But we started getting, David Clare came in from Houston and he started getting track casts. And they're not just on these springs where water's hard to find in Texas. They're not just 18 and 16 inches, little bitty wide feet. You know what I mean? Juveniles. So yeah, we were getting at water sources, good tracks. And so I knew at that point I would just be ridiculed by coming forward with this evidence from my iPhone. So I let the researchers research, and I took what they gave me as input. And it was interesting from that point on. It was.
Well,
So,
most of the listeners, they already know that rock throwing. Really,
sure.
what can you do beyond that?
Let me tell you about my son's last encounter, which I not share with anybody. On the porch of the hunting house, which it's a hog hunting and axis trophy reserve for private landowners to hunt. So we had a hunting house with a hog winch and everything, and we kept a lot of bird seed and bird feed in an old box, an old wooden box on the front porch of this home that we rented when we had hunters booked. Only then, it was not occupied. And every day I'd come by there and the levels would be lower on all, something's opening up and taking the seed, the sunflower seeds, everything. So my son, I was gone. This has been the last 3 years. And I think one of the guys from Facebook already knows, one of our friends, but a Texas researcher, but I was gone for a couple of weeks and my son was feeding the animals on the farm, the horses and all the dogs and stuff. And he went up there and he heard the door bang go down. And he said, Dad, I turned around and peed my pants. And now this is my son's about 6 foot. John, he said it looked like it had Down syndrome, was about 7 foot tall. When it saw me and it had this feed in its hand, it reached up and grabbed a tree limb and pulled it down. And he said, I sat there trembling. The dogs didn't bark, so they were aware of it. And he said that my watch stopped. Now, he had a regular watch. Well, I mean, that's one of those phenomena that no one likes to talk about. And I keep thinking to myself, what can scream at you and stop your watch? So there's been stuff like that John Edward told me that I know is true. You know, encounters like that. But when you and
Now,
I were here, we had a Christmas tree that was outside. It was decorated with antlers. We call it the totem tree. And you come up there some nights, and about half the antlers would be gone. And the next night there might be a few extra. They were messing with it. We knew that. So
wow.
we made a medicine wheel with the antlers one night, and we put out game cameras. And you see the medicine wheel before, and then you see the medicine wheel after, and then you see the game camera with hair on the arm get taken down. And we've got pictures of that too. So there was stuff going on that just defied explanation during that period.
Didn't you
It was,
also have an incident with that water trough?
yeah, okay. So uh, if anybody knows anything about Central West Texas, it's just like the Ozarks. It's beautiful until about June when it dries up like the surface of the moon. So and there's no water. Every animal, you might see a mountain lion and a damn local sheep sharing a water trough. They're that desperate for water. And we had 5 cisterns on 1,500 acres to service that area. And I came up one day and the water trough was rocking, dude. And I was like, something's been in this water. I looked for a dead animal in there. I looked around and there was no sound. There was no birds. There was no squirrels, nothing. And then I heard something move off through the brush. And then I looked and saw a trail of water that had dripped from what looked like a humanoid figure with some Scott Carpenter looking wet prints like he used to get out of those springs up in Tennessee. And yeah, I mean, it was creepy as hell. I got inside his thought. I went straight back to the house. And folks say, are you scared about nighttime? The daytime can be alarming too. Yeah, that was a true incident that happened for sure.
Well, remember the ranch house next to the other ranch house?
Yes, the big,
Now that's where you had the antler tree.
yes.
Now wasn't there a big concrete water trough there?
Yeah, there
A,
was
a
cistern.
round one.
Yeah, and there were things. We found animal skulls left there. But look, the best set of footprints I ever pulled. Randy, a Bigfoot's footprints has uncut toenails in it. You know what I mean? They're a perfect set, but then you'll see those gnarly, if they're in perfect clay mud, those gnarly toe prints. It was a pretty set of tracks. And I had Morley and MK come cast them, and they drove in to do it. But yeah, I found a trackway there. I found a lot of the hog skulls, and I found some hog hips that looked like they'd been used for digging tools. It was a neat spot there. But yeah, uh, that's where a lot of activity happened on that waterfall in spring.
So I remember beyond that cedar grove where it had all the twists. That
Right.
was where the fence kept getting broke.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Look, I haven't talked about this subject in a long time. Okay. I don't know who's ever smelled Sasquatch urine. It is the most powerful ammonia smell you'll ever smell. So you know what I was doing? I was putting antlers in the damn wire where I saw them bending it, and they would bend that heavy gauge wire like it was butter. And I knew it was either big hogs or something heavy. So I started putting antlers and stuff in there. I came back one day and they had urinated all over everything on that wire, and it was just rank. So yeah, that was a hot spot too. Those fences are not going to keep them from going where they want to go. There's no
Now
question.
that is I hope people, because I did tell a story of a lady once who said a Bigfoot had peed all over her front porch when her son, her 14-year-old son, had a bunch of male friends over. And anyways, so when you now, so here's another story about urine. So I just find that interesting.
Randy, it's that anhydrous ammonia that farmers use to keep their hay and their grain products. It was as strong as that. It was the strongest ammonia smell I'd ever smelled. And here I am holding this out. I just dropped it. I smelled like it. It was powerful. So yeah,
Wow.
that's them letting me know, hey, we
So
know.
do you think that they were taking that as a bit of a challenge that you kept trying to stop up their
I,
entrance?
I honestly think, if you want to know what I really think, because you and I did a lot of thinking together, I think that they allowed the young and juvenile to come and express their interest and interact with me. And I think when the big ones were out hunting and ripping through the fence and collecting animals, that they didn't like me messing with those areas, and that was their way of letting me know these are the adults. You need to stay away from this area. Yeah, that's how I felt.
Well, and a smart male would understand that sign, the sign that they were giving you, and
Yeah,
respect it.
yeah, that's how I felt. I respected it. I wore gloves too in the future as far as my collection stuff. But yeah, I
Mm,
picked hair out of those twisted trees. I sent them to Claire, and he sent them to have them tested. And I don't know if Henry at this time was even still doing it or not, but we know who we're talking about when we say his name. They came
right.
back primate imbricate scale pattern unknown, and so it was definitely from a possible human or primate. But these are by those twisted trees. Now, some of those hairs, and this is what we learned when you and I do what we do, were 3 to 4 inches and tapered at the ends where they'd never been cut by scissors. A bighorn sheep out here. The bones are absolutely scattered along this fence. And Rick Tillis found this in the exact same area right here, this predation, as John's hair. Come here, John. Let's take a look at that hair that you found. Okay, now that starts off as kind of a silver and then turns red on the ends. And it came from up here about 4 or 5 inches above my head on a 10-foot fence. So it came up about 7 feet high on a 10-foot fence. Let's look at that hair again, up close. And then we've got a predated animal, bighorn sheep, by the tall fence. We got some 4.5-inch hair that goes silver to red. It's pretty good stuff, man. They were not horsehair, or from the mane of an ungulate. So yeah, it was interesting. We found a lot of good stuff near that cedar grove. So.
All right. So now that is the ranch that we're going to say is about 40 minutes outside of San Antonio.
Yeah.
And
now
we're
at it in armed guards. We can say anything we want.
Yeah. So yeah, good luck finding that, people. Draw a big circle around San Antonio.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
But now we're going to talk about the Mark Twain, because when I was there with you, we were able to talk about, say, like that gentleman who purchased that land and was cutting the trails between the Mark Twain and his ranch, for his horse ranch. Remember, yes. He was having issues with something not quite being very happy about him cutting new trails in there.
Yeah, not far from. I guess I can say this: Lake Wapapello has an area called Victory Horse Trail, and it runs all the way from Wapapello all the way back to the upper Mark Twain National Forest, where the Ozark Scenic Riverways are. And there's a lot of guys in the Ozarks now that have their own channels, and I'm proud of them. But I'm telling you, when you go back in there with a chainsaw into the forests out here that are usually left alone, they got a reaction back there. And yeah, some of their equipment got messed with. It was not pleasant. But yeah, those trails that they were cutting, they started hearing a lot of vocals at night, which I found interesting. And then there was obstructions laid across the road and things that got their attention for sure.
Yeah, and I believe I talked briefly with that young man. I call him a young man because he was young compared to me.
Sure.
That was setting up that horse ranch. And so, like I said, to clarify it for the listeners, he was actually cutting a trail to separate his land from Mark Twain, which was just solid woods.
Government hunters on his land, but he also wanted to be able to hit the horse trails because he's a rider. So he cut some very precise trails along there. And pretty soon his horses were going nuts in the stalls. And he was getting some loud noises on the sides of his home and things that you and I associate with it. And this is a former rodeo rider who's not scared of anything. And he just didn't understand what was going on.
Well, I do remember specifically that he said while he was cutting the trails, he would turn around and come back through and there would be trees laid down in his way.
They pulled him back across his path to block his tractor. He was finding stuff that was alarming him greatly. I think they pulled the top off his pump house or well house. He came out one day, which is about 300 pounds. They just flipped it off. He got the message, and it wasn't long after that. Speaking of heavy duty stuff, that our feral gas tank, and you know what I mean by that, right? It's a 500-pound tank of propane. You see that right there?
Yeah.
I came up here on this number 3 farm where you and I sat for a while last time you were here. And that tank was off its moorings. And so I called the local gas company to come service it. And the guy looked at me and said, "Your tank is full. What in the world could have possibly gotten it off its concrete anchors?" And I just looked at him and said, "Maybe it was a lot of water moving through the air." And he goes, "Maybe it was a Sasquatch." And he said that, I didn't. But yeah, there was some stuff going on during that period, heavy activity during that
Hell,
period.
those things are heavy when they're empty.
Imagine what can push a big giant propane tank off its moorings, a 500-gallon tank. That's pretty
Wow.
wild. So yeah, that guy had a lot of experiences, and he still to this day has a few now and then.
Wow. Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now the next order of business is when can I go hang out with Mr. Brookerson again?
Let me tell you about my last encounter and see if this fires you up. And if you talk to any of our old friends, you tell them that I do miss doing this and I'm ready to do it. I got a week off. I was deer hunting 2 years ago in a stand right below this valley, and I was blowing a grunt call at dusk. You know what I mean? A buck call. It's a grunt call. And I blew about 4 times. And I was hunting with a female friend who's a circuit judge, and we had an interesting time together. We were waiting. We kept hearing noise. I looked over right at dusk. You got to quit hunting. You got about 10 minutes left at magic hour. And I saw a pair of eyes, and I said, "Is that a cat or is that a?" And she looked at me and said, "It looks like a gorilla." I turned back, and eyes were blinking. And about that time, all the local dogs along the road lit up. And so since that time, that particular area down there, the only thing we've had in that deer stand are nesting vultures. We've had no activity, no deer around there, nothing. And it used to be a hot spot. So, I mean, if you want to go, I've got a spot we can sit up in a deer stand and a couple of chairs and put some equipment to good use and enjoy our evening if you want to.
So,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, a sitting judge said she saw a gorilla in the Mark Twain National Forest.
Tall. She looked at me and said, "It looks like a gorilla." All I saw was a pair of eyes, blinking in the dusk. I'm wearing glasses these days, but I was being still because I was trying to kill a dog and blowing a grunt call. And whatever responded to it was definitely not a buck. And we didn't see any deer that season in that area. And to this day, there's not a lot of activity in that particular spot. I think it would be a good place for us to go.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to lay this story out there. Uh, Mike was down at the ranch, the area down in the San Antonio area, and I was actually visiting family in Little Rock, Arkansas, when he flew in, or yeah, you flew into Little Rock and then joined me there, and then for the first time, you and I both went up to your location there in the Mark Twain by Ellisnore. So I just want everybody to know Mike is my friend. We've been friends for a long time, and if we lived closer, we would certainly do more. But we're about 6 hours apart. That's a pretty long ways. So
And if you got a better spot in mind, trusting your judgment as I do, especially with all the wonderful work you're doing on your show and with your evidence and your YouTube channel, I'm so very impressed with the stuff you guys have done. Your thermal imagery, everything. And so, yeah, if you got it somewhere else in mind, I'll just come meet you.
well, thanks, buddy. But I like your area too. I just need to be able to schedule my time better to where I
Under,
can fit those kind of places in because there's stuff to find where you're at. We just got to do it.
we just got to do it. And we need to do it before these deer and turkey hunters past October 15th take our woods over and stomp the scent out of everything and start rutting for bucks again, for sure. So let me see if I can find a picture too of the waterfall, which is right next to that hunting house where you and I had such success with like the rock clacking that we heard and the things of that nature. Let me see what I can find. I haven't been back to this stuff in a long time, but I'll do my
Okay.
best. Good talking
Thank
to
you
you.
so much, buddy. I appreciate you.
My pleasure, Randy. Take care.
All right. Bye bye.